All right, Sal, you were there. Tre'Davious White leaves practice injured today. What did it look like?
All right, so the practice was inside the stadium today, and we were, as a media group, basically in the one end of the stadium. It was the tunnel end, but, in the kind of the corner area. And we were all watching. And Tre White, after an 11-on-11 play, we could see something, like the media saw something. We didn't see it was like kind of not, he wasn't near the play. You're not following the ball. If you're following the ball, you're not seeing him. It was kind of through the players, right? So there was a couple of media members said, hey, who's that over there? It looks like someone's hurt. And we all looked over, and it was Tre White, and he was like hopping on one foot. Now you're like, oh, crap, right? Because of the injury history there. So we knew that was the case. So watching him, didn't see exactly what happened. Didn't see if he got stepped on or if it was non-contact. Just could not tell, to be honest with you. So we see him hopping a little bit, and then we see Mitch Trubisky basically go over to him and walk him over to the sidelines. And as he's doing that, he's still hopping on one foot. Then he goes over, and he's with trainers basically. They walk over to the wall area, and Tre looked like he was upset. He was like kind of hitting the wall like he was upset, talking with trainers, standing on both feet at that point, talking with trainers. I would say he's there for about maybe 2-3 minutes. It probably seemed like longer. That was probably what it is. And then eventually he started walking on his own with a trainer trailing him, walked across the field, like the end zone area, walked all the way up the tunnel into the game day locker room, which is on the back of the tunnel there, not close to the field. It's on the other side. Walked into the locker room there, and we didn't see him for a little while. And then a few minutes later, took a look, and he was back. He had walked down, and I didn't actually see him physically walk down, but clearly he did. He walked down back towards the field and stood there and watched a little bit of practice, and then got into a cart sitting in the front seat, and then they drove off through the tunnel back towards wherever they went.
Well, we've talked about him a lot. A lot's riding on him, it seems, with the Hairston injury and the Bills having some uncertainty, maybe to put it mildly, at that position. And you've liked how he's looked, I think.
Yeah, I've liked it, except for some times. I think it's been inconsistent. I liked how he looked maybe in a couple of practices. I haven't liked how he looked in a couple of practices. I didn't think he was particularly strong in the Bears joint practice, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think he's had some really good days. One day he was the best player on the field at training camp, and I think a couple other days he's not been as good. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to like, but there's also some concerns. That being said, he's clearly a starting cornerback. I mean, that's what he is right now. He is the starting cornerback opposite Christian Benford. Now, on a related note, Christian Benford also ended his practice early, but he didn't go back out for team reps, and I don't know if he walked all the way out of the field, but he went off the field, off the practice field, and we did talk to him after practice, and he said he was fine. He just needed some rest, but that's okay. But if anybody saw that report out there, that's what happened with Christian Benford. But look, man, I mean, Tre'Davious White is the starting cornerback, and until Max Harrison's ready, that's going to be what it is. And if he's out for any significant time, then it really brings into question what you have. And to me, I mean, the next guy up to me would be Dane Jackson. Now, I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of fans. The reason why I say that is I would think the Bills would want to lean on a little more experience on the outside and a guy that has started for them before. Could you put Jamarcus Ingram in there? Sure. But Jamarcus Ingram plays so many positions for them. He's so valuable. I don't think you would pigeonhole him just to start on the outside. I think you would have Dane Jackson in order to have Jamarcus Ingram available to do other things. That's why I say I think Dane Jackson would be the next man up.
Mm-hmm. The obvious name from the outside here, Sal, would be Rasul Douglas. A caller asked about him a short time ago. And my thought on him is just how they went to Tre White early in the offseason in the first place. But yeah, it might have been the case that Douglas was looking for more than Tre White would have gotten here in a deal somewhere else in free agency. Now it's August 21st. He doesn't have it. I wonder, it's not just White, but maybe even Benford, dare I say it, depth pieces too, just injuries. And, of course, Hairston, he would be the name on the tip of your tongue, but is there a reason you might think where the Bills just would never call him, or is there someone else? What do you think of Douglas as it's a red flag if he signs, right? Because then they're probably concerned about where they're headed with their injuries.
Yeah, well, Would I say never? No. I think that, you never say never. I mean, if they're in a spot where they need somebody, I think the first thing you do is get somebody who knows the system. You don't have to onboard them as quickly, right? I mean, you go get somebody who you can plug and play and say, hey, you know what our calls are. You've played with this group before. And, Russell did that for a year and a half. I'd also say I think I share I know a lot of fans saying that today, but I think a lot of those same fans would say and go back and look that he wasn't as good last year, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of times where you felt he just wasn't giving you what he did the year before that when they got him in a trade. So what does he have left? What is he right now? And the fact that he hasn't signed anywhere, we don't know what that means. Could that be what you just said, Mike, which is he's just asking for too much money and a team just like, I don't want to do that? Or has he gone and he's met with teams and like, not really what we want right now because he's not really what we thought he was or could be or, still is, that kind of thing. So you never know. I mean, but he's still out there as a free agent, and that sometimes should tell you something. So, but would I say never? Of course not. I think if there's something significant, I think a guy like that would be, what are your other options and alternatives? You're not getting a draft pick at this point, obviously. I think you just have to wait for Max Harrison then to be ready and hope that he can play. I do want to add, though, a couple of things about Tre'Davious White, because I think that this is just context that needs to be out there after tweeting and reporting today and reading a lot of people. Number one, I've seen a lot of reports, even people attributing to me or other reporters there, saying he was carted off the field. I think that's not correct when you think of the way people are carted off a field. Tre'Davious White did ultimately leave the field while sitting in a cart. He walked all the way up the stadium tunnel into the locker room. Then he walked back down the stadium tunnel to where the cart was. It also is a long walk, and if he's going to go outside the stadium, which obviously he did after that, and at that point, I think you have to take into context that they're not going to have him, basically walking and doing that. If he's got to go outside the stadium and over to the other locker room and the training facility, they're going to bring a cart for him. So I want that, number one. Number two, Mike, it is notable to me, and I don't have to say this means something or doesn't mean something, but it is notable to me that the head athletic trainer, Nate Bresky, wasn't walking with him up the tunnel. It was a trainer. There was someone there. But I just noted that it wasn't the head athletic trainer, right? Doesn't have to mean anything. I'm just saying in my experience, a lot of times, it will be him, in those situations where there's something
scared.
Concerning, right? So, I like I said, I don't want to necessarily have to read anything into that, but I do want to make note of it.
Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline. Mike Schopp here. Bulldog is off today. Just to put a bow on this regarding White. So tomorrow is a travel day. Is there any reason to think there will be an update? Of course, somebody could just break in at some point and this is what he's got. But is there anything official tomorrow that could tell us the news?
No, there's no media availability tomorrow, so we will not hear anything. The only way we would know, I think, before Saturday. Now, Saturday night's a long way away, right? We got 48 hours here plus before they play a game. I guess what I'm waiting for is, does he show up in Tampa in the stadium? And is he with his teammates? Is he in uniform? Is he on the sidelines? I think that's the next thing to see. It is very possible that he doesn't make the trip, but it doesn't have to mean that it's also a majorly serious injury. I'll give you an example. Last week, Cam Lewis didn't make the trip with the Bills. Cam Lewis was practicing this week. So you just never know how they handle these things.
Mm-hmm, right. So there was also a fight today, and it sounded like a pretty good one.
Yeah, I guess good relative to a lot of bodies and a lot of people in there, right? I mean, it's football players pushing and shoving. Basically what happened was Taylor Rapp kind of gave Elijah Moore a shot, and Elijah Moore threw the ball back at him, tossed it back at him, whatever. That exchanged some words, and a whole bunch of guys just started gathering around. Next thing you know, people are pushing and shoving. They're getting hands on each other. And then guys were on the ground. And I looked down, and A.J. Epinesa is on the ground, but I don't know if he was pushed on the ground. He fell. Deion Dawkins pulls him out of there. He gets up. They start talking to each other. They kind of sort of put hands on each other. They weren't really fisticuffs or anything. And there was a lot of words exchanged between a lot of people. That was after a little while before that. It looked like to me DeMar Hamlin had hit I think it might have been Ray Davis coming through the hole or somebody. There was maybe it was Elijah Moore. My apologies, but he did hit somebody, give him a shot. And even Josh Allen came in and said something when everybody kind of gathered in. So it was chippy today. And Sean McDermott said before practice he was going to have the ones practice today and go ones against ones, and they were going to have to get some, I think he said, like, conditioning in, or, making sure they're that kind of thing. And he said they're not going to like me much for it. So it could have just been seriously like people are just on edge because they're not happy that has to happen. But I think Sean's plan was, let's do this so these guys don't have to play tomorrow, Saturday.
Do you have, that's interesting, do you have a take on Rapp? Wasn't it Kincaid that went out yesterday from a hit by Taylor Rapp, and then I'm not sure if I'm right here, but I read somewhere that he might have been kicked out of practice for this one. So is he crossing lines as you see it?
Yeah, I did not see him get kicked out, but one of my colleagues and a couple of my colleagues did say that, so I'll trust that I didn't see that happen, but I was focused on what was happening. So if that was the case, yes, they did report that. My take is that you have to know the situation in the moment in the practice, and I love the fact that he goes hard. I love the fact that he wants to practice and be there, but you have to understand what the situation is. I will tell you, yesterday against Dalton Kincaid, I mean, Taylor Rapp went up to make a play on the ball. So did Dalton Kincaid, and I think they're just going hard. And just because of the way Dalton's body was kind of angled, that it might have happened and been more severe than it should have been. It's always tough. I try to really understand, being around football my whole life, Mike, that these are football players who are playing football. And yes, as much as you're not supposed to hit or take to the ground, you're also supposed to try to make a play, right? And sometimes those things happen. But I do think there's times where, and Taylor Rapp specifically has been kind of in the middle of this a little bit, I do think there's times where you have to know when to kind of let up and not let that be a part of your game in that situation.
We've talked about a lot this week even, some uncertainty at safety beyond Rapp with Bishop and what their options are. How good a player is Rapp for you?
Well, good is relative, I guess. I think he's super important for the Buffalo Bills. That position is really important for what they need for guys, and he kind of does everything for them. I don't know if you saw my tweet yesterday. I don't think we talked about it specifically, but yesterday I asked Bobby Babich about the evolution of safety, and it used to be 3 and strong, and now there's just 2 safeties, and Bobby loved it, and he's like, yeah, I love talking about this stuff. And he talked about how he came from the 46 defense, 46 single it was called, and that was Doug Plank's jersey number, right, and all that. Mm-hmm. And I think, Taylor Rapp is kind of the new age kind of safety that Bobby Babich is referring to, which is he can play deep center field, but he can come up in the box. And this is what we're talking about, right? He's a physical guy. But you need guys who can do everything there. And that's what the new wave, new age type of safety is. That's what they're thinking Cole Bishop can be. No longer really is, well, you just have a guy who's a thumper. That was back in the day. You just have a guy who's center field. I think it's more important for the Bills and their defense, by the way he talked, to have guys who can really play center field, because he said playing in space is really important. But the other reason why Taylor Rapp is important, and I'll go back to what Sean McDermott said back at the owners' meetings, I believe it was, Combine maybe, I think owners' meetings. He said Taylor Rapp basically does what Terrell Bernard does for them, for the secondary. He sets their defense. He's a super important piece for them, and we all know how, that is something they really rely on there. So good, yeah, I think he's made some plays, no doubt. Is he, an elite safety in this league? No. He had some interceptions. I think that he's progressed, like, from where he was when he first signed. He was behind Micah and Jordan. But I think he's important for what they do.
Who's your all-time favorite safety?
All-time favorite safety.
Ronnie Lott is the first name I think of. I'm not sure, I couldn't come up with somebody that I liked more, but, not a Bill.
I might say that. I might go to Steve Atwater.
All right. Atwater, same mold.
Yeah, Atwater was just, he was a thumper, but he could do a lot of things too. I mean, how can you not love Kelso and Smith? Now that is you want to talk about old school style of safeties and how teams played it. That is a true strong and free, right? That's Leonard Smith,
no doubt,
and Mark Kelso. And I told a story before, and I don't know if I've told to you, but I remember being in high school and go to a game and the Bills got beat on a couple post patterns. I go back to Cleve Hill the next day, and I'm at football practice, and I say to my old defensive coordinator, athletic director, Carl Curris, who founded the Trench Trophy, I said, Coach, why do the Bills get beat on these post patterns, right? They have these really good safeties. And he said, because Leonard Smith is too undisciplined to stay in his zone. He wants to hit everybody, and Mark Kelso's not fast enough to cover for him. That's what he said. Yep. It was great. And I'm like, yeah, it's right. I understand now.
Sounds right to me. Basically, I could buy that explanation. We talked yesterday about Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and their importance to the Bills in their years, McDermott's history. McDermott also had Brian Dawkins for 10 years when he was on the Philadelphia staff. There's an all-time great, too.
No doubt, yeah. I mean, you talk about some of these guys that McDermott has had, and that's one of them. You know, McDermott talks about Brian Dawkins a lot. Like, he refers to him as one of these guys, like talking about the safety play that they've had, you know, over the years and where he's been in Philadelphia and Carolina. So, you know, he's done a really good job of developing safeties. And he's also had the opportunity to work with really talented safeties, and it's kind of been the perfect match. You know, and right now it's a bit of a concern. I like what he said about Cole Bishop today, though, that, you know, he likes where Cole Bishop's going right now. He likes the progression. He used the word callous again. You have to build up the callous. You have to, you know, failure is the best teacher, and I think this was Bobby yesterday. Failure is the best teacher, and, you know, making sure that, you know, going through these tough times is really important for a lot of these guys. So, yeah, I like what I'm hearing from them, but, you know, now you have to go put it into play and see him do it.
Just a couple of minutes left with Sal Capaccio here on the Western Hotline. How about Saturday night? We found out that Josh Allen will not play in this game. No surprise, really. Do you expect any of the starters to play? I mean, thinking about, again, Tre White, whether he makes the trip, you sort of read into that a little bit, what it could mean. Would you have thought he would have been on the field if he were healthy, though?
No, I don't. Sean even said today, he at that, like, when he met with us this morning, he said at this time he didn't anticipate most of the starters playing, but he said everybody's a case-by-case basis. We asked him about Curtis Samuel, for example, because he hasn't had that time. And he used, this is a good example, right, of how you're going to have to think about this. He said, well, you know, Curtis was missing this time, and, you know, you might think that he would play, but he actually really liked what he likes what he's done over the last couple of days since he's been back. You know, is that a guy that you need now to see on the field, or has he done enough over the last few days to say he doesn't need to be on the field and you have 2 more weeks to get him ready here? So I think that's a good example right there. I do think Cole Bishop will play, though. I think you have to have him back on the field to get more of those reps to, I'll use Sean's word again, callous, you know, to go through those things again, to understand. And I would expect, though, Mike, honestly, that I think Saturday night probably looks a lot like, personnel-wise, it did last Sunday night.
Well, maybe the Bucs will cooperate, unlike the Bears. And I would expect this, actually. The Bills are favored in the game, so somebody else is expecting it too, that they're not going to – we know we're not going to see most of Tampa's, if not all of Tampa's top guys. Got to be fun for you. Looking forward to Tampa.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, go down there tomorrow night and then have all day Saturday, and I have some friends down there and been trying to coordinate. My buddy who you've had on the air before, TJ Reeves, the sideline reporter for the Buccaneers, trying to get together with him maybe if we can. We'll see how it goes. But, yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, you look forward to these warmer weather trips when they're a little bit later in the year. Tampa at this time of year is going to be pretty hot. So, but that's okay. Not complaining at all. But, yeah, for sure. I have some friends down there. I got a friend who's a really, really big Bills fan, and him and his family, and they're driving up maybe about an hour from where they live down a little south of Sarasota. And, you know, he calls me and says, hey, you want to get together for lunch with my mom and dad? They've been seen in a while. So that kind of thing is pretty cool, you know?
I talked to John Ledyard earlier and was just looking up the Buccaneers. It didn't hit me right away that they have won that division 4 years in a row, going back to back to Brady. And not always with great records. One year they were 8-9 and won it. But, yeah, they're on a 4-year NFC South title streak.
You know, it's funny, too. They come here this year, and it's always weird that it's weird for me this year that the Bills are playing them in the preseason and playing them in the regular season. I did ask Mike North about that when the schedule came out. Hey, you know, how does that happen? He said the league does it. It's not the teams, and it's the third preseason game, so you're not probably expecting the starters, and because they don't play until later in the year. But I still think it's kind of weird that happened. Then I was thinking today, Mike, you know this because I know you know this, but the Buccaneers were the only team that had never visited Highmark Stadium, currently Highmark Stadium, for many years. And then they did, 09 maybe? Dante Whitner, right, has a nice play there, and T.O. And then since then, though, now the last few years, this will be the third time in the last several years they've been here. This is the regular season, I mean, when they play.
Yes. 09, 17, and 23. The 23 game, the Thursday night game, it was the so-called 17th game, the extra, you know, both first-place teams. That game that, the game ended on a failed Hail Mary?
Yes, yeah,
Tampa?
I remember that. It fell harmlessly to the earth, but, man, if someone turns around, it might not have fallen harmlessly to the earth. I saw Chris Godwin's going to start returning for them very soon, and they're hoping he's ready for October. The Bills play them in November, so you know that's something to monitor there. And, that would be, 3 times? This will be the third time in 9 years, then, that Tampa comes to Buffalo, which is kind of odd for an NFC team.
Right, that extra game does give you that.
Yep.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Sal. Enjoy the trip down.
All right, thanks.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline.